Welcome to the AA Podcast, our little corner of the web where we are not afraid to discuss tough questions like,
when did nutrition, health, movement, and stress management become alternative medicine?
Where we embrace challenges in all aspects of life to become healthier and stronger versions of ourselves.
And where food and movement are the best kinds of medicine, and cooking meals at home is a revolutionary act. Hello, and welcome back to another episode of the AA Podcast. This is Ashley Olson.
And I'm Andrea Crane.
Andrea, this is our 1-year episode anniversary.
Oh, this is it? This is
Yes, this is it.
That okay.
This is 52 episodes.
Well, whoop-de-doo for us. That is incredible.
It's pretty,
wow.
So virtual high five.
High five, friend.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
I think what we'll probably do here in the next, few episodes, we might just do like a little year recap and kind of gather our thoughts. But
I like that.
But we also want to hear from you guys as listeners. We want to hear from you. So if you have enjoyed a specific episode, we would love to hear that. If you have been inspired to change something in your lifestyle, whether that be through nutrition or maybe adding in some exercise regime, we would love to hear that. If it sparked your interest into looking into the more things, maybe in the more functional realm, we would love to hear that. So
if you're eating liver now, we would love to hear that. So,
yeah, Andrea would be thrilled if she heard from you and that you started to eat liver.
So thrilled.
Yes.
Now I will tell you, I do have a friend that texted me this past week. I'm going to read you the text. I'm not going to say her name because she has not given me permission, but I received this text out of the blue in the middle of my day on Friday. Okay, I'll eat the liver. That last podcast has me trying to toughen up Buttercup and buy a whole liver.
Oh, man.
Thank you, darling. You know who you are. And yes, I hope you like your liver. So,
well, I have yet to add that into my weekly, but I will try to get there as well and
so
toughen
you're
up.
ahead of Ashley.
Yeah,
so good job.
because it wasn't
you know
even
who you are.
on my thoughts. But I do the cod liver, so at least I'm doing that. I know it's not the same, but
that's fine.
Anyway. So congratulations on a year.
Yeah, you too. You too. That's amazing.
Yeah, I'm pretty stoked. That's pretty awesome. And it flew by. I mean, it really did.
Okay, well also, Ashley, what was that stat that I sent you? It was like some crazy percentage.
Yeah.
What was that? Was it
I'll have to find it.
Yeah, we should find that.
Yeah.
We should find that for the next episode.
We'll include that into our year recap episode. But before we get on that tangent, we're going to wrap up our 2-part series on sunscreen. If you haven't listened to the first one, highly recommend you do that. And why we aren't so keen on the sunscreens. And
that rhymed.
It is.
We try to talk and rhyme wherever we can.
Yes.
Yeah. It's just part of our free service.
Yeah, exactly. But before we do that, as always, we're going to share our weekly Bible verse. And mine's coming from 1 John 4, 16 through 18, which I think my last one was 1 John 2. But so 16 through 18, so buckle up. It's a little bit.
It's worth it.
So we have come to know and to believe the love that God has for us. God is love, and whoever abides in love abides in God, and God abides in him. By this is love perfected with us, so that we may be confident for the day of judgment, because as he is, so also are we in this world. There is no fear in love, but perfect love casts out fear, for fear has to do with punishment, and whoever fears has not been perfected in love.
I love it.
I love love.
That's awesome. It sounds like that sounds like a Pauline verse, but it's John. So that's awesome.
Mhm.
Okay, so mine comes out of a Pauline epistle. This is Philippians 1:6. Being confident of this, that he who began a good work in you will carry it on to completion until the day of Christ Jesus.
Love it.
All right.
Well, Andrea, we're going to talk about why the sun is not trying to kill us.
The sun is not trying to unalive you. There has been a virtual war waged on sun and sun exposure that really is largely without merit. And so I just wanted to talk a little bit about that today and hopefully encourage people to get back out there with some bare skin and don't be afraid, right? No fear. No fear. The sun loves you. The
Are
sun
you
loves
a
you.
what's it called?
In the all
Butthole
together.
worshiper?
What? What? Ashley. Oh my gosh.
Have
Oh
you
my
heard of
gosh.
this craze?
No, I have no idea
Oh,
what this is.
okay. Well,
What?
look it up.
Oh, I don't think so.
Oh, yeah, it's a whole thing. Like,
Oh,
yeah.
like in your all together,
Uh-huh.
like
In
naked
your
out there.
nethers? Yep.
Oh, that. Oh no, 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 not gonna do that. I have neighbors. No, no, that would, yeah, Nampa's finest would be here in a hot minute. So no, but do get out there with exposed skin, just not that exposed skin, please. Um so yeah, the sun, you guys, there is so much data out there about just so many topics related to health and consequential time spent in the sun. Okay.
Mhm.
So the first thing that I wanted to talk about was longevity, because this is sort of one of these statistics that has to do with all-cause mortality. All right. So we'll talk about specifics as we go through this. But the first one that I wanted to talk about was this idea of longevity. And this is from a very large prospective Swedish study that was published in the, small and obscure Journal of Internal Med. Actually, that's one of the most prestigious journals that we have in medicine. But this was a study looking at nearly 30,000 Swedish women. This is a huge study.
Wow.
What they found is that participants who avoided the sun were 60% more likely to die than those who didn't avoid sunlight. Okay, so this is all cause mortality over a prescribed period of time that they looked at. Okay,
You said
so
20-year study?
I believe,
I
I
just
can't
Googled. It says 20-year,
remember.
20-year.
Yeah, that sounds right. So it was a prospective study, but there are when they do a study this large, kind of like the Women's Health Initiative study,
Mhm.
when they do a study this large, there's so much data. It costs so much money to do something like this. Like, you want to wring every last drop of data out of it that you can. So people will go back and sift through all the information and see if they can extrapolate, different data points from there. So that's what we're seeing here, is that they looked through, 20 years of data on these 30,000 women, in fact, and found that, if you avoided the sun fastidiously, you were 60% more likely to die of all cause. Whatever you got, heart attack, stroke, cancer, like whatever, you're more
It'll get
likely
you.
to die. Right, exactly. So, research also indicated that inadequate sun exposure might be associated with development of MS, diabetes, cardiovascular disease, dementia, mood orders, psych issues. Like, it is unbelievable the amount of disease that is correlated to inadequate sun exposure. Now, here's what I want to do, because I want to throw this out there. Please hear me. I'm not saying that there are direct correlations in the data. Like, or I'm sorry, that there are correlations. What I'm saying is there's not causative studies that
Yeah.
say, okay, this is causing this.
Yeah.
But we have corollary data. We have
Mhm.
correlations that are being made. And that is quite powerful to me. Now, a lot of these studies that I looked at when I was prepping for this episode, they do control for things, because I want you to start thinking about, like, okay, think about these 30,000 Swedish women and think about the ones who avoided sunlight. Well, is
Mhm.
there anything about a person that avoids sunlight that might keep them from dying, or that might make them die earlier than someone who doesn't? So think about the lifestyle.
Depression.
Well, yeah, think about the lifestyle of someone who avoids sunlight, okay? So we could be talking about people who don't exercise very much. We
Mhm.
could be talking about people who, maybe you can extrapolate and say, well, if they're inside all the time, if they're working all the time, if they don't get out and move, maybe they don't eat so great either.
Mhm.
Maybe they smoke.
Yep.
Maybe they engage in all these other habits. Now, what I
Yeah.
want to say, that is a good skeptical way to look at a study, and we all should be skeptical when looking at studies, okay?
Yes.
Um but I will say that in a lot of the studies that I looked at, they did control for those lifestyle factors and
Okay.
still found that the people who avoided sun as best they could, whittled it down to, okay, this is just the effect seen by this one metric of sun exposure avoidance. Okay.
Mm.
They did everything they could to whittle that down to just one thing, and control for everything else being equal. And it was the sun exposure that really in, reduced the rates of all cause mortality.
Wouldn't it be sad, like, after the 20-year study and you're the woman who chose to be
Oh,
not from the like, not to be exposed to the sun
oh
and be
my
like,
gosh.
"Oh,
All this
why? What?"
time, I know, it wasn't trying to kill me, I need to get out there.
And they're
Yeah,
moving to the Caribbean tomorrow.
right? Oh my gosh, yeah, especially from the
But
Netherlands,
it
yeah.
makes sense on the cognitive stuff because, I mean, winter blues, I don't know about
Yes,
you, but I
yes,
especially as I've gotten older, like, I am
mhm,
done. And I live in
yeah,
Colorado. We have many
right,
days in the winter that we have
yeah,
nice sun days.
mhm,
And I still crave just being in the sun,
yeah,
um,
yeah.
and
No, and
getting
and
south.
that's
And that's
that's
another
a real
thing.
thing.
Yeah, because the UV exposure changes obviously
Mhm,
during the year. So you're not necessarily
right,
getting the full benefits of the sun in the
right,
winter, even if it is
exactly.
sunny.
Yeah, and that's another point that I wanted to bring up with these studies, because what we know about sun exposure is that that is the best way to provide our bodies with vitamin D, right?
Mhm.
So, is it the sun exposure, or is it the level of vitamin D? And further research needs to be done. Okay, so what if we supplement with vitamin D? Does that normalize these numbers? I don't know, and I can't answer that. Okay,
Right.
so based on the literature, I can't answer that. However, what I
Anecdotally.
do know is that we crave the sunlight.
Mhm.
People do get seasonal affective disorder. This is a real thing.
Mhm.
They do feel better when they get one of those happy lights off of Amazon and set it on their desktop. Um, Sun seems to move a lot of levers in
Mhm.
in our physiology.
Yeah, agreed.
Yeah.
Um, that's a fascinating study. Well, I'll link this, I think I can pull up the study,
Oh, cool.
and
Yeah.
and, uh, and link it for you guys to check out, uh, to read it yourself. Because I mean, that's I like the study just from what you just explained because the amount of women that were
Yeah.
in the study and
Oh.
the time frame that it
Mhm.
was in.
Mhm.
So a big thing is like, we kind of touched on it last episode where, oh, I don't want to get burned. Like, I don't want to get
Mhm.
skin cancer. So what about skin cancer?
Yes. Okay. Well, I'm going to start off with there are three primary types of skin cancer. Okay. So we're going to start off with the most common type of diagnosed skin cancer, and this is the basal cell carcinoma.
Hmm.
Um, if you have not gone online, we all need to be very prudent with our skin, right?
Yes.
Because you can people come in to primary care or to dermatology all the time and say, hey, could you take this mole off, or could you look at this little growth here? Does that need to come off? Is that concerning? And yes, we'll look at it, but you know what, when you come in for your visits, you've got clothes over most of your body, and I can't like hone in on an area. So it's really important that you keep track of what's going on with your skin, all right?
Hmm. Yep.
So, I would strongly encourage you to go online. There are great pictures of all these different types of skin cancers. And then what you can do is the next time that you go in for your primary care or for your dermatology appointment, you can just say,
Take your picture, say, this
"That's right.
is here.
That's right. That I know. This looks like what I got going on my knee.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so yeah, we'll take a look at it for you. But the basal cell carcinoma, this is the most common type of skin cancer, and this is responsible for about 80% of all skin cancer cases. All right. So this is the kind that primarily occurs in sun exposed places on the body, and a lot of times we'll see it on the face. Okay, because like you'll see them on the temple area, especially on the left side, because that's where you drive, right? And so the sun comes through the window. You'll see them on the hands,
Yep.
okay, because steering wheel, or
Hmm.
whatever you're doing if you're out in the sun. But those places, on women, the décolletage area, right, the chest area here, a lot of times you'll see them there too, because that accumulates a lot of sun in women. Um, so the risk factors for basal cells are excessive sun exposure, fair skin, family history. Um, if your family is riddled with these basal cell carcinomas, then yeah, you absolutely could have a genetic propensity for these. But here's the deal. It rarely, if ever, metastasizes. This is a near zero fatality rate. This is not like the big C. Okay. If you want to have cancer, this is the kind you want to have.
Yeah.
Frequently, these suckers will recur after removal. So they dig it out, they come back.
Mm.
Now, that is a whole nother topic for another day, and I could get myself into trouble with that one. So I'm going to put it down, like like a good dog. I'm going to put that bone down.
Okay.
Um, but I am not a huge fan of these aggressive excisions of basal cell carcinomas, because
Uh,
they lead to some pretty to it's I don't think that there is a need to cut people up like we do. I just
mm.
don't. um so next one, squamous cell carcinoma. This is the second most common type of cancer, of skin cancer, and this one can metastasize, but also rarely. Um, Removal before it metastasizes gives a survival rate of 99%. So again, this is not something that is like, whoa, cancer. Okay. This is also related to repeated sun exposure. It can be related to repeated injury. Okay. So one thing that comes to mind is, let's say that a man has like a mole on his face, and then he's
Oh,
constantly scraping over the top of that mole. Okay.
yep.
So that constant injury and repair can actually can propel the cellular machinery into a cancerous state, or a transformation, if you will, into a
So
cancerous cell.
so basal cell carcinoma, you're not a fan of necessarily removing, but what about the
Squamous
squamous?
cell, I think there are better ways to go after these as well.
Okay.
We have some chemicals that we can use, that I think we use very effectively. I think they are very effectively. One is an immunomodulator, and it actually seems to work really well for these things. But they're not very lucrative
Mm.
for the offices that are doing this surgery. Anyway, moving on. Melanoma. Uh, this Okay, melanoma. This is the big scary. Okay,
Yeah.
I'm not making any bones about that. Melanoma is the scary one. All right. Here's what we know about melanoma. It accounts for only 1% of skin cancer cases. Survival rates are anywhere between 99% and 35%. And this is depending upon when it's diagnosed. All right. So I remember back a million years ago in my first undergrad days, I remember when I was taking a class called Biology of the Cancer Cell. And I specifically remember that professor saying that once a melanoma had reached a depth of, I can't remember the depth, but it was something very, very small. As if it had thickened to that degree, then you could pretty well guarantee that that melanoma had metastasized to brain, bone, liver, like it was gone. And it was off to the races, and you were in trouble. So melanoma is nothing to mess around with, okay? Now, here's also what we know. There are rising rates of melanoma throughout the world, despite the increasing use of sunscreens and also sun avoidance. People are freaked out to go in the sun. Now, this data comes from the American Academy of Dermatology. This is from the horse's mouth, okay? They admit that, yes, melanoma rates are rising despite the increasing use of sunscreen and despite sun avoidance, all right? But here's what they say. They say, well, that must be because people feel safer being out with sunscreen on, so they spend more time in the sun, and that's why melanoma rates are rising. Well, I'm sorry, that's ludicrous. That's just foolishness. So I don't buy it. Here's what we also know. Melanoma occurs in areas of the body that have received minimal sunlight exposure. These are not the areas where you got burned as a kid. These are not the areas that got burned or damaged over and over and over again. These are weird areas that did not see the sun. Okay?
Like your hoo-ha.
Well, yes. Yes, like your hoo-ha. That's not
Yeah.
what we call it in
No,
clinic, but yes, your hoo-ha.
your nethers.
The region, if you will. Yes.
No, I've
Uh,
heard that. Like they're
yeah,
like, I that part never got any sun, and
yeah,
that's where the cancer showed up.
that's right. That's right. Yeah. And so,
And we're supposed to accept that as just normal.
right. Yeah. No, it's sun. No, it's not. No. But we also know that outdoor workers have much lower rates of melanoma than
Isn't that
indoor
crazy?
workers. Yes. And these folks, people who work outdoors, they're exposed literally every single day.
Yep.
Okay. So the people who work inside have more melanoma than the ones who work outside. Now, last time we talked about a Swedish study of 30,000 women. It was a prospective 20-year study of 30,000 women, from which a ton of data was gotten. All right. Now, what the Swedish researchers found was that in the women who use sunscreen the most, they had the highest rates of melanoma.
Wow.
Okay. Now, listen to this. This is what I find incredibly damning. that this association, now remember, the association is those who use sunscreen the most have the highest rates of melanoma, okay? This association still holds for those who did not get sunburns while using sunscreen. Okay. So the idea that, well, if you're using sunscreen, that you're staying out longer and you're getting more sunburn and damage, that's why you have increased melanoma. No, the association still held for those women that did not get sunburn. Okay. So it is, that's not it. That's not it.
Mhm.
This argument that people are just, willy-nilly staying out in the sun, a million times as long because they feel safe, this false sense of security because they've got their sunscreen on. That's a ridiculous argument. An
Yeah.
absolutely ridiculous argument. Okay. So, simply put, being in the sun, not using sunscreen, and getting burns, none of this causes the most deadly of the skin cancers. None of it,
Hallelujah from my book
right?
because I love
Yeah,
being outside.
yeah, yeah. So I do too. I do too. And, the research is very clear that the people who are outside the most, the people that don't use all of these chemical sunscreens, they are the ones not getting the melanoma. Now, how about other cancers? Okay. Because, you might say, well, okay, so there's melanoma, but what about other types of cancers that are, that are deadly? Like, for instance, breast cancer. Well, a very large epidemiological study found that women who get more solar UVB, this is a constituent of sunlight, get more UVB solar from the sun exposure, had half the incidence of breast cancer.
Wow.
And for men, they had half the incidence of fatal prostate cancer. So prostate cancer in and of itself is a highly treatable, highly survivable cancer, but very similar to cervical cancer in that if you don't get it and it metastasizes and it, or colon cancer, same thing. If you don't get it and you ignore it and ignore it and ignore it and ignore it, it will metastasize and it can kill you. So for fatal prostate cancer, half the incidence for those who were out in the sun getting sun exposure.
So
Okay.
what do you I mean, the person cuz skin cancer, melanoma
Uh-huh.
is pretty prevalent in my family. Like my
Mm-hmm.
grandpa just had a bunch removed from his face
Mm.
recently. Um so
Now, were
for
were
somebody
they
like
melanomas? Are you sure they were melanomas?
I'll have to
Yeah,
ask. They
I
may
would
be
say,
basal cell.
I bet they probably were. Because if somebody's talking about a bunch of something, it's probably basal cells.
Okay. So,
Yeah.
like, for somebody like him, I mean, he's 93. He's not going to change what he's
Right.
gonna do. Um,
Yeah.
for somebody that has maybe they're younger, like even, in their
Yeah.
20s or 30s and have had this scare of melanoma or
Mm.
basal cell or how you say it, squamous?
Squamous cell carcinoma. Yeah.
Squamous, squamous.
Uh-huh.
Like, how do you tell somebody, "Hey, it's okay. Like, it's okay to be in the sun." Like, that's a hard
Yeah.
conversation.
Well, it is a hard conversation, and I understand. So if somebody's had things removed from their face, like I get that. I get that, right? Because our answer in modern day dermatology is to cut, 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 because that's where the money is. So that's why we do it.
Mhm.
Now, um if they've had it on their face, they're probably not eager to go under the knife again. So I totally understand that, right? But we know, if you listen to the last episode, we
Mhm.
know that there are things you can do. You
Yep.
can eat. There is a supplement that you can take
Yep.
to increase your risk of resiliency in being out in the sun. There is a peptide that you can take to increase your resiliency to being out in the sun. There are things that you can do. Now,
Mhm.
that said, I would take care not to burn. Because once you've burned, then you can collect some skin damage. And the skin on the face is thinner than the rest of the body. And women are keenly aware of this. Like, there are different products that we put on our faces that we don't put on the rest of us, and vice versa. Right. So we're very aware. Men not so much, but it's that tide is turning. They're starting to take care of their faces too. But skin on your face is a lot thinner. It's different than the skin on the rest of your body. So yeah, I mean, if you want to put on some mineral sunscreen on your face, I do.
Yeah.
I don't every day, but I do.
Yeah.
So
okay. So well, with that, how does one get safe sun?
Okay, yes. So
How do we practice safe sun?
Oh my gosh. We have gotten a little feisty in the last couple of episodes here. Ashley, we're a year in and now you just think you're untouchable. So okay, so safe sun, practicing safe sun. So let me just tell you, according to your American Academy of Dermatology, there is no safe sun. Like there is no amount of safe sun. Yes, these people, okay, I didn't mean to say these people. These folks. I'm gonna put my
individuals.
I'm gonna put my finger back in the holster. These folks say that you need to wear sunscreen indoors and reapply throughout the day. Okay, okay, that's dumb. That's dumb. That's really, really dumb. In fact, if you go online and look right now, do I need to wear sunscreen indoors? You will find 30 articles that will pop up from news sources that say, yes, you absolutely need to wear sunscreen indoors. This is stupid. Okay?
I just pulled it up.
Yeah. All right. So, here is what you can do. You can go outside until you are just turning pink. Now, I realize that some people with more melanin in their skin, if you are black or brown, you're not going to burn like somebody who is white or pink. Okay?
But you still will burn.
You can still collect some sun damage. You absolutely can, but not in the ways that somebody who has a higher Fitzpatrick type does.
Yeah.
We're going to go through those types. Now, I would also say, here's what I tell my patients to do. So the sun is the strongest. You will get the strongest dose of vitamin D between the hours, and this kind of accounts for daylight savings time around the country too, but between the hours of about 10 a.m. and 3 p.m. That's when the sun is at its most intense, and that's when you get the vitamin D. Like that, that's a really great time to get some. So you go out there and hang out for 10-15 minutes. All right. Now, if you come back in and you're pink, then the next time you go out for 10 minutes if you went out for 15 the time before. You don't want that profound color change, right? You just don't want the burn. Your body will create more melanin in the form of a tan. Again, provided that you are types 2, 3, 4, or 5 or 6. Okay, so let's go through these types actually.
Yeah.
So Fitzpatrick type 1, this is an always burn, never tan type. So this is the super, super fair people. So you're thinking about like either red hair or real blonde hair. They always burn, they never tan. The only tan these folks would ever get is if their freckles run together, but they are not tanning. Okay. So type 2, this type always burns, tans with difficulty. Okay. So this is just a little further down. These are the folks, this type 1 and 2, these are the folks that really have to watch and pay close attention. Like go out for 10 minutes and see how your skin does. But you don't have to be afraid. right? There's
Right.
nothing to be afraid of here. But it just takes a little experimentation. Now, type 3, this is where I am. This is probably where you are too.
I think I'm a
Sometimes
4.
you think?
Mm.
Okay. Sometimes mild burn and tans about average. Okay. And then type 4 rarely burns and tans easily.
Yeah.
Okay. Type 5 never burns, tans very easily. So these are usually folks with brown skin. Then type 6 never burns, tans very easily. This is the highest Fitzpatrick type, and this is black and heavily pigmented skin. Okay. So, yeah, if you are in those higher Fitzpatrick types, I'm sorry, I guess it would be the lower Fitzpatrick types, like the 1, the 2, the 3, then you want to take care not to burn. But we've given you lots of ways to not do that in the previous episodes.
That's
But
right.
you can get more sun than you think you can, and you can build up, and it's good for you.
Yeah. Like growing up, we always said like the first day of summer that we were outside, like we would get
Mhm.
a little bit more red. Never
Yeah.
really my cousins would get super, super burned. And
Yeah.
me and my brother would just get a little
Hmm.
red, but the next day, like, it would be completely tan.
Oh, wow.
And
Yeah.
then that's how it's been my whole life. Like, um, I crave my I
Yeah.
always joke that my hobby in the summer is to see how dark I can get, and I've lost my
Yeah.
tan this year, and it's making me so sad.
Yes. Well, Melanotan
Yeah.
for the win.
Yeah.
But yeah, so that's kind of all I had on kind of busting the sun myth.
And, you can look at the study that she referenced. I'll link it in the notes and, start, with everything that even we say, we do our research and we are very confident in the information that we're providing you, but that
Mhm.
does not mean that we don't expect you guys to question it still, and I
Yeah,
hope you
absolutely.
do. And I
Mhm.
hope that you guys do more reading and research and,
Mhm.
diving a little bit deeper into some of these topics that honestly, like sunscreen, that's just one like everybody's like, "Oh, of course, yeah, just you do sunscreen." Like that's
Yeah.
just it's kind of one of those don't ask questions topics,
Right. Right.
because it's proven, quote unquote, to be
Right.
fine, right? But, you know,
Ask
there's there
questions.
there's always room to ask questions. So,
Yep.
no, this was really, really helpful and um honestly it just makes me feel better for, wanting to be outside and
Yeah.
it's okay to have a tan line. It's
Yes.
it's okay to get some color on your skin.
Mhm.
Obviously, with everything. I mean, we even when we're talking about supplements, we're always saying there's a good amount of level, but then
Yep.
we don't want to take too much of it, or
Right.
we want to
Moderation.
moderate, and so
Mhm.
everything in moderation. So
Yeah.
same thing with our sun exposure. So, well, thank you,
Mhm.
Andrea, for putting all of this together and putting it in a
Course.
way. You're so great, and I have had people tell me this, like, you're so good at um putting it in a way that is super easily
Oh,
digested. Like you're
that's
not
awesome.
speaking high level, because you can definitely speak up here, but you put it in a
Oh,
way that just makes a lot of sense. And I also appreciate the way you put it in such a um kind but um very strong standpoint. So
I do have my opinions on things.
yes,
Yeah.
we both do. So
Yeah.
but yeah, if you've listened to the last couple of episodes and you're just like, oh my gosh, I question everything.
Mhm. Uh-huh. Yes. Welcome.
I'm congratulations.
Yes. You've made it.
You
You've
have made it.
arrived.
Yeah, after a
Mhm.
whole year, you have made it.
You have.
Um, but yeah, if this was a kind of a aha moment for
Mhm.
you in these last 2 episodes. The biggest compliment that we ever receive is you sharing our episodes with your friends and family, whether that's just sending the link to them or
Mhm.
sharing it on your social medias. And if you do share it on your social medias, it would mean the world if you would tag us and let us know,
Yeah.
because we want to give you a little shout out. And again, we are wanting to come gather some quote unquote reviews of this last year, your thoughts, your
Mhm.
what you've maybe implemented into your life, and we would love to hear from you. So shoot us an email. All of our contact information is in the show notes. And Andrea, we will see you in year 2.
Woohoo! All right. Bye, guys. The content provided in the AA podcast is intended for informational and educational purposes only. The podcast is not a substitute for professional medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment. Always seek the advice of your physician or other qualified health provider with any questions you may have regarding a medical condition. The information and opinions expressed in this podcast are solely those of the individuals involved and do not constitute medical advice.